Do 2018 AP Micro FRQ number 1. This is a monopoly. In the 21st century, yada, yada, yada. Single current monopoly power in a small town. Assume that Single Cinema is a profit-maximizing firm currently operating at a negative economic profit, also called a loss, in the short run. Draw a correctly labeled graph for Single Cinema and show each of the following. Now we just have to know how to draw monopolies. Downward sloping demand. Remember, this is your DARP curve. It is also your average revenue and your price. Marginal revenue, always let it go negative here. Marginal cost. And they are profit maximizing, so we'll go straight up till we hit the price curve or the demand curve, bounce to the left. That's our price, PM. This is our quantity, QM. Price, quantity, PM, QM. The area representing negative economic profits. So we just have to show a ATC that's above the price. If your price is less than your ATC, you are making a loss, or what they call negative profits. Sounds kind of elitist, but anyway, and do they ask us to show? Yeah, they want us to show that area of profit. So we just come to where our price is. We go straight up to hit our ATC, bounce to the left. This is our area of loss. And this should make sense. At that quantity produced, the average cost is much higher than what we can charge for this good. So you've got to be making a loss here. All right, B, explain why Single Cinema continues to operate in the short run despite earning negative economic profits in the short run. And the easy way is just to say that the price must be greater than the minimum of the AVC. Understand here that if your price ever hits the minimum of your AVC, you would shut down. So even though we're making a loss, we would keep operating because our price is greater than the minimum of our AVC. In essence, we're covering some of our fixed cost. And I don't think we need to put that in there. I think this will give us all the answers. I'll look after I do it. C, would Single Cinema's total revenue increase, decrease, or stay the same if it decides to sell one fewer ticket than QM? Do recognize that we can find the elasticity of our monopoly demand curve here by finding where marginal revenue is 0, which is right there. If we go straight up, tick, 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 wherever we hit the demand curve, that would be unit elastic right there. Everything below it would be inelastic. Everything above it would be elastic. So this section of our demand curve is inelastic. This section is elastic. We're in the elastic section of the curve. So if they said, if it decides to sell one fewer unit, one fewer ticket, what do we know is going to happen to the price? Let's say the quantity of that ticket, I'm going to change the color here just to make it easier to see. Let's just do black. If we're producing this quantity now, the price has to be lower. Understand the monopoly can choose his price or his quantity, but he can't choose both. So if the quantity increases, the price has to go down. To sell one more unit of good, he has to lower his price. So we know that we're in the elastic section of our demand curve. At profit max, they're always elastic because marginal revenue is positive. So if you're in the elastic section of your demand curve, and you lower your price, now this is where it gets just a little bit harder to draw, but let's say we use this model instead of our model up there. We draw a total revenue curve. We could do that up there, but it would make it a little sloppy if I drew that total revenue curve. And I know right where marginal revenue is 0, right there, is where total revenue is maximized. That's unit elastic. This is all inelastic. This is all elastic. Now, we know we're producing in the elastic section of our demand curve. We can see that, right? So if we were to lower our price, what happens to our total revenue? Can you see how it goes up? The more if you're in an elastic section of your demand curve and you lower your price, your total revenue will increase. If we had been in the inelastic section and we lowered our price, our total revenue would have gone down. So think about this. If you're in the elastic section, the demand for your good is elastic. If you lower your price, you get a ton of more customers. So all these customers flood back to you and your total revenue goes up. So we would say just exactly that. Total revenue would increase. And we would say as we're producing, as demand is elastic and price decreases, total revenue has to go up. Write it out. Don't use the arrows. I'm just doing it to make it a little cleaner on here. All right, demand. Single cinema hires workers in a perfectly competitive labor market with a downward sloping demand curve, obviously. Suppose the number of workers available in the market decreases. So let's draw that side by side. Labor markets. Now, these are labor markets, not product markets. So this is the supply of labor. This is your demand for labor. This is the market or industry. We would have wage on the vertical, quantity of labor on the horizontal, wage up here, quantity of labor down here. It is a perfectly competitive labor market, and they are wage takers. Oops, a little off there. That should be going right through there. Pretend it is. This is our supply of labor, or marginal revenue cost, sometimes called marginal factor cost. Here's our demand for labor. Downward sloping, also known as our MRP. This is everybody's demand for labor. This is our specific firm's demand for labor. Now, they're saying that the number of workers available in the market decreases. So the supply of labor decreases, shifts to the left. When supply of labor decreases, there's less workers. That's going to drive up the wage. Tick, 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 tick. We got a new supply of labor, marginal revenue cost or marginal factor cost, new wage, right? That is higher. Well, understand that your MRP is calculated by talking about the marginal product per every worker times the price of the good. They didn't say anything about the good going up. So the price of the good did not change. Each worker is still just as productive as they were before. So that doesn't change at all. Your marginal revenue product will not shift or move anywhere. So understanding that, obviously this was the quantity of labor we hired originally. When the wage goes up, we hire less people. Our quantity of labor would decrease. We can see that the wage rate would increase, and we would say as supply of the labor goes down, wages go up. What will happen to the marginal revenue of the last worker hired? This question in itself caused all kinds of heartache. Think about this. This is your marginal revenue product curve. As you go down, as you hire more workers, right? As I hire each additional worker, the marginal revenue product of that worker falls. Tricky, right? So when I hire that worker to that worker, the marginal revenue product went down. So if I fire this worker and I hired this one, well, I had already hired that one. When I fired that one, the idea is that this marginal revenue product had to be higher than this worker right here, if that makes sense. It is tricky to think about, but obviously, and they say what will happen to the marginal revenue product of the last worker hired. It will be higher, and I guess you would want to say it increased. And then to explain it, we would just say that as we hire less workers, each worker's marginal revenue product must be greater than the previous one. However you can say that, it is hard to make sense of. But if we're firing workers, we know that each worker on here, as we fire that guy, and then we fire this guy, the next guy's marginal revenue product had to be higher than his. If we fire him, his marginal revenue product was higher than that one. I hope that makes sense. This is tricky to understand and explain. All right, be safe. Take care. Bye.